Afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Smith from Foundations. Welcome to today's Foundations Live. And as you probably gathered, it's neither Tuesday afternoon or 2 o'clock, but this is the first time we've ever done a Foundations Live that wasn't Tuesday afternoon or 2 o'clock, because it's a special one when we've got officials from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government coming to talk to us about the consultation that's currently live on the DFG allocations process. In case you're new to Foundations Live, where the Foundations is the national body for home improvement agencies and the Disabled Facilities Grant, and we are funded by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, who you're about to hear from. And if you're looking for closed captions and you're on the Foundations website, if you scroll down, you'll find the links for either LinkedIn, Facebook or YouTube, where you can get the same stream with closed captions. So without further ado, let's welcome Rebecca and Bilal from MHCLG.
Foundations Live.
So hi both, welcome to our Foundations Live this afternoon, and I'll bring up your slides, Rebecca, and hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And thanks very much to all of you who have joined us for this webinar on the currently live consultation on the principles of a new approach for allocating DFG funding to local authorities in England. I'm Rebecca Jurowski. I'm Policy Lead for the DFG and Home Adaptations at MHCLG, and I'll be leading this session today with my colleague Bilal Hussain, who's the Key Economic Advisor and Analyst for Local Authority Housing, who's been leading on the technical aspects of the proposed formula. Caroline Jackson, Head of Home Adaptations and Domestic Abuse Policy, will also be supporting the session today. In this webinar, I'll run through the proposed new approach, including the formula, and we will take technical questions before moving on to discuss proposals for transitioning to a new approach. There will then also be time for questions on this as well. And please feel free to pop questions in the chat as we go along. MHCLG has concluded a review of the way that government allocates DFG funding to ensure that funding for the grant is better aligned with local needs. We're now consulting, as you know, on the principles of the new approach and its transition, and we welcome responses from you all, from local authorities, organisations and individuals with an interest. The way government DFG funding is allocated has not been updated since 2011. A 2018 independent review of the grant recommended that the methodology should be reviewed and brought up to date. This recommendation was also made by the 2024 Levelling Up Housing and Community Select Committee inquiry report into disabled people in the housing sector. A new approach will help ensure funding is better aligned with local demand so that more adaptations reach those who need them most in your local communities. It will also support local authorities to continue to meet their statutory duty to provide adaptations for people who qualify. I should also say that the proposed approach is still in development, and your views, provided through your responses to the consultation, will help progress a future formula and options for transition, which would be subject to ministerial decision. We really do encourage you to submit your responses by the deadline of the 16th of September. Finally, updating the distribution of funding is broadly aligned with government's wider agenda on local government finances. Government published a consultation on local government funding reform, seeking views on the detailed approach to determining new funding allocations for LAs and fire and rescue services, and responses to this consultation are now being analysed. Funding for the DFG is currently allocated to authorities in England based on a relative needs approach developed by the Building Research Establishment in 2011. We recognise that this approach is now outdated, including indicators and data. We know that populations have shifted over the past 14 years and that the distribution of disabled people has also changed. Therefore, the amount authorities are allocated may no longer fairly represent local demand for the DFG. However, we consider that the underlying principles of the current approach remain important aspects of calculating local DFG demand. This is because including an estimate of older people in local areas, in addition and separately to an estimate of disabled people, enables us to capture the prevalence of older people that may not consider or define themselves as disabled. It's also because applying a measure of income deprivation to the count of disabled and older adults reflects that adult applications for the DFG are means tested. And also, it's because excluding local authority-owned housing stock takes into account that local authorities with a housing revenue account should self-fund home adaptations for council tenants through this account. We are proposing to update the indicators and data used to measure these principles. We're also proposing that other indicators and principles are needed for a new approach. We suggest that the prevalence of disabled children should be considered separately to the prevalence of disabled adults. This is because children's applications are not means tested, and disabled children that apply for a DFG often require more expensive adaptations. We also suggest that there should be a weighting in the formula to account for the variation in building costs between regions. We are therefore proposing a new approach to bring the allocations up to date that is as easy as possible to understand, uses robust, readily available national data sources which are likely to continue into the future, and an approach that is fairer, better reflecting local demand. On this slide, we're showing the formula that we are proposing in the consultation. I'll give you a moment to look over this, and in the next few slides, we will set out the indicators in more detail. Population variables in the formula include estimates of the number of disabled adults and children and estimates of the number of older people in local areas. We consider these to be the main driver of demand for the DFG. As mentioned before, we propose to estimate the number of eligible disabled adults and disabled children separately to ensure fair representation within the proposed formula. I've included the data sets in the slide where we propose obtaining estimates for the value of adult disability, child disability, and number of older people in local areas. You may notice that there is a misalignment in the definition of adult and child in the data sets we propose using. ONS data defines a child as 17 years or younger. The Family Resources Survey defines a child as 15 years or younger, and 16 to 19-year-olds as dependents. We consider that for the purposes of our proposed approach, the impact of this misalignment is minimal. I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Bilal to set out this slide.
Yes, thanks, Rebecca. So, yeah, you can see that there are, on the left-hand side, there are three formulae. And those terms, the DI, CI, and EI, are exactly those in the previous, two slides back in the formula. So as Caroline noted in the last, Rebecca noted in the previous slide, so there are three main terms in the formula that are disabled adults, disabled children, and non-disabled older people. The first formula, disabled adults. So in order to sort of derive that estimate, we use DWP benefit combination statistics to estimate each LA's share of regional disability benefit claimants. So that's the left-hand side, that's the ratio, the fraction. That is then multiplied by regional disability prevalence estimates from the Family Resources Survey. And the reason for doing it that way is that we don't have any reliable, up-to-date data on LA level adult disability prevalence. So what we're having to do is basically assume that each LA's share of regional disability benefit claimants is representative of each LA's share of regional disability prevalence. So we've got good data from the Family Resources Survey for regional disability prevalence amongst adults, but we need to find a way of breaking it down back to the LA level. The next term is below it is disabled children. So can't really use that approach for children. Disability benefit data is unlikely to be a good indicator of child disability. So we use FRS data on the number of disabled children by region to then obtain the percentage of, so we've got the number to obtain the percentage of disabled children in each region. And then we multiply that by the total number of children in the LA using ONS estimates. So again, this makes the assumption sort of the other way around almost, but this assumes that the LA's regional disability prevalence, the regional disability prevalence is representative of disability prevalence of children at the LA level. And the final term is non-disabled older people. It's actually, relatively speaking, similar to disabled children. So we use Family Resources Survey data to estimate the percentage of non-disabled older people by region. And then use that by multiplying, multiply that by the total number of older people in the LA area according to ONS estimates. And as I say, again, that assumes that the proportion of non-disabled older people regionally is representative of the proportion of non-disabled older people by LA. And for those last two terms, it's just a constraint. We don't have we don't have data at, strictly speaking, at the LA level of disability prevalence. So we're having to sort of almost use the regional data the FRS data to infer what happens at the local authority level. So that's next slide, I think. Rebecca.
Thanks, Bilal. To reflect other drivers of demand, the proposed formula also includes an income deprivation score, the proportion of non-council owned housing, and we have also included two further adjustments in the formula, the first being a weighting for regional building costs. We were asked for clarification by LAs of what we meant from regional, so we updated the consultation document with this information and contacted authorities to let them know about this clarification. Each local authority's allocation is weighted by the building cost index of its corresponding region rather than by a local authority specific index. The regions that we use are the North East, North West, Yorkshire and the Humber, East Midlands, West Midlands, East of England, London, South East and South West. The final adjustment is a maximum grant amount adjustment, which will ensure that no local authority will be allocated funding at an amount lower than the upper limit of the grant, so currently no lower than 30,000 with the current upper limit. In the consultation, we're seeking your views on whether you agree with the principles of the proposed new approach, if you would change anything, and if so, what you would change. As I've touched on previously, understanding your local authority perspective is paramount to developing a new formula. With thanks to Foundations for collecting questions from local authorities and through correspondence, we've noted that LAs have both policy and technical questions on the new approach, including in the following themes: housing adjustment, regional building costs, and data on methodology. I've set these questions out in these and in the following slides, but again, please pop any technical questions you may have on the formula in the chat and we'll have time for further questions after this. I'll give you a couple of minutes to read through this slide and the following slides. And on this slide are questions on regional building costs. On to the next slide. And here are the questions that we've received on housing adjustments within the formula. I hope I've given you enough time to read that slide. Moving on to the next slide, which will set out questions on data and methodology. I'd like to draw your attention to the final question on the slide, as this is a question we've received from a number of local authorities, and I think I've seen it coming through in the chat as well. So the question is, how often will data be updated? And the answer to this is that this will be kept in consideration, and that will be subject to ministerial decision. So now it is time for further questions, collected in the chat or otherwise. I welcome the best Paul's advice on the best way to do this.
Yeah, so there's a few come through, Rebecca. I think a few people have asked around understanding what the new amount would be through the allocation. But I think I'm right in saying that that's not kind of the purpose of the consultation, is to come up with a formula that's fair for the future. And I think it's certainly fair, much fairer than the existing formula. In terms of the formula itself, either Rebecca or Bill, I think just kind of giving an overall kind of explanation of the rationale behind it. I mean, I think it's, as you kind of said at the start, it's that it's a range of data that's available. It kind of indicates the need relatively per local authority, and it's data that's relatively regularly updated as well. So I think it kind of keeps pace over a period of time, which has been one of the particular issues with the current formula.
Yes, exactly. So it's not really meant to directly estimate, demand that could arise for DFGs in any given year. I mean, that would be quite difficult to do. So that would require quite a lot of information that we just don't really have access to, or to produce forecasts. But no, as you say, it's designed really to try and capture, in the fairest way we can think of, relative demand based on eligible population across LAs.
Yes, yeah, I think, and it's again kind of reflected in some of the questions. Perhaps one of the key things for people to think about is kind of tapering or kind of transitional arrangements to a new allocation. So I guess with any change of formula, probably most local authorities will be somewhere not too far from where they are now, but there will be some that kind of go up, some that go down, and kind of the period of time that's assumed over. And is it kind of any thoughts on that at the moment, or are you kind of particularly looking for local authority feedback on kind of periods of time and level of change from one year to another?
So yes, exactly as you said, Paul, we welcome views from local authorities on the approaches that we've suggested in the consultation document. We're inviting views. I have a couple of slides on traditional approaches that I will go on to after this, and then I've got a couple of slides on questions there. So perhaps we talk a bit more about that in a few moments as well. But ultimately, we are inviting views from local authorities and what they think a good transitional arrangement to a new allocation with a new approach might be, and what that would look like.
Yes. There are a couple of questions around, share on the screen. So that the kind of level that allocations will be determined at, I assume that kind of initially it will still be at kind of district council level.
Local housing authorities are the authorities that have the statutory duty, so that is definitely at the forefront of this work in developing the new approach.
And then for local government reorganisation, I guess be similar to previous changes where if it's a larger authority made up of smaller authorities, the allocation for smaller authorities would just, I suppose, kind of added together for the larger authority. I suppose just in case there are any boundary changes, Bilal, I suppose that might make it slightly trickier in terms of working out a new allocation if an existing district was split in some way. That's, I suppose, kind of fairly theoretical question at the moment.
It is a theoretical question at the moment. Yeah, I mean, we'd have to consider that. I suppose we can look at taking proportions and population weights, but we have considered that.
Yeah,
it's not an issue quite yet. Yeah.
Okay. It kind of in terms of, I'm not quite sure if that's correct, in terms of BCF not being updated for over a decade. But I suppose the DFG is still part of the BCF overall, isn't it? And will continue to be. But the DFG allocation has always been slightly different to the BCF allocation anyway, hasn't it?
Yes, the DFG is ring-fenced funding within the Better Care Fund, and that is where it currently is at the moment, yes.
Yeah. Let's have a look. There's a couple of questions about council housing and the allocation for council housing and HRA funding. But this sits outside of that, doesn't it? But is there anything further on HRA funding at this point?
We can't really comment on that beyond what we've set out in the slides, in that
yeah. And
adaptation
just
changing, and it's outside the scope of this consultation.
And just in case anybody hasn't caught up with all the chat, I think Caroline's confirmed in the chat that the overall funding level is a decision for Department of Health and Social Care at some point in the future, isn't it? In terms of, do you just want to go back slightly, Bilal, in terms of the regional data applied to kind of local authority areas, and I guess kind of how that links into your kind of choice of data. I think kind of a few people were asking about, and obviously there's a variety of different indicators on there on a variety of things, from age to disability to kind of economic status within areas. You could just kind of refresh us on kind of why the particular data sources have been chosen.
Yeah, so we have looked at or considered using the census. I think someone made that comment. And the issue with that really is that it's at least our view, and of course, it's a consultation, so interested in everyone's views on that. But we think that potentially it's quite, by this point, outdated. It is 2021 data, and the Family Resources Survey is potentially really the main source for our disability prevalence estimates. But as I say, that's at a regional level, that data that DWP publishes. So we think that's better, and it's in the sense that it's more regularly updated. It's annually updated, and it's a well-established source. It's got good sample sizes. I think something like 18,000, but it's been a while since I've seen. And it's pretty robust. So that kind of really drove the decision to use Family Resources data, survey data. But then obviously you come to the issue of, well, how do I break that down back to LA level? And hence sort of looking at disability benefits. Again, DWP source, consistent, regularly published. In fact, that's published quarterly. to break down adult disability prevalence estimates. And with children, that's obviously not such a good source, but for that we're using ONS, or propose to use ONS estimates, which are updated. I think they use census data as the kind of like starting point, but at least they are regularly updated based on their understanding of what's happening in the population trends. So it's going to be hopefully less outdated by the point in time at which we actually update the formula than had we used the census, for example.
Thank you, but I think that's it's really useful to understand. A couple of the questions are around potential, or I suppose there was potential to use some of the data from the annual Delta returns in terms of demand, which may or may not be a useful indicator. I mean, I suppose it shows which local authorities spent the most in the past, but doesn't necessarily show or doesn't necessarily reflect some of the issues with the current formula. Was there anything you want to say around use or not use of the Delta returns?
I mean, for my part, I mean, it's meant to be a relatively objective formula that uses eligibility, which is, I suppose, in a sense, the main criteria for DFGs, amongst others. But it's the main criteria is like what's the eligible population. So it's meant to be a fairly objective sort of estimate of demand that the formula kind of creates in that sense. And I think you just sort of alluded to that. Using historical sort of outturn what was actually sort of awarded. Has its risks. So does any approach, but I mean, I think we consider it to be a bit more objective in terms of dividing funding up by using national indicators and data sets of that sort.
Let's have a look what Greg's asked. So I mean, I think, Greg, I mean, looking at if you go back to the 2018 review, there's quite a detailed section looking at the existing allocations and how they might change. I mean, it was a different formula that was discussed as part of that 2018 review, but it did, I think, highlight some of the problems with the current allocations formula, which this one is very much looking to address. And so it's, I mean, I suppose, as you kind of say, you're kind of picking the best data that's available on you, the kind of the appropriate level that will be updated the most frequently and is potentially most reflective of what the need is for DFG across the country. And given that the existing formula isn't really based on that so much, that there will be a change, but it should be far fairer going forwards. And I think that's what the consultation's about, isn't it? The kind of the next 10, 15 years rather than the last 10 or 15 years. I don't know, is there anything else you picked out from the chat, Rebecca, in terms of
the chat has been fast and furious, and I know that my colleagues Caroline and also Patricia from DHSC have been answering as many as they can. So I've not picked out any that I can answer where an answer may already be in train. It's also been pretty fast. It's really great to see all these questions, and hopefully as many as possible are being answered.
I mean, quite a question from Martin there is, do you have kind of a view, Bilal, on which of the factors are the most influential on the final allocation? Or I guess it may depend from area to area, depending on the mix of factors.
I think it is the eligibility numbers, the population numbers. That's by far the largest driver. Population, the proportions. And there is a question someone I sort of say, is a fair share, this kind of relates, is a fair share a number, or is there an associated unit? Well, it's a percentage. The share is what we use to then divide the number up. It's effectively a percentage that that LA gets. So that's
and then I think kind of overall it gives you the proportion of the overall pot, doesn't it?
Yes, the proportion of the overall pot that the LA will receive. That's the way that the formula is designed to work. Just very quickly, if I may cut in, there's also, the index of multiple deprivations 2019. Yes, exactly, it is. And I think Caroline may have mentioned something about that somewhere. I think that is one place where you could say, despite my my comment that the census is outdated, yes, that is quite an old data set. It's the best measure, in our opinion. Again, as I say, it's a consultation. If you've got any ideas on better data sets, absolutely all ears here. Yeah, that's the best we have, and I'm not aware of the timelines on any updates or next releases for that. So yeah, that's potentially a constraint on us, but it's the best we've got.
Yes, yeah, I think I'm certainly looking. I think all the data sets are, if you know where to look, they're all kind of available in the public domain, aren't they? And yeah, you can see how those kind of different factors impact. So this one, and I suppose this one for Chris is what you're asking for as part of the consultation in terms of the period of time that any change is introduced over, and that's Chris's one of the key questions in the consultation, I think, is to kind of give your feedback in terms of how long, how big a jump, whether there's no decrease, minimal decrease for the few that might get less. I mean, I think equally for the ones that might get a fair bit more, it's kind of the period of time that you would want to kind of ramp up your own systems for delivering that, because we kind of saw back in 2016 when all kind of councils got a fairly significant jump, quite a few found it quite tricky to spend that much initially. So I think kind of if it either goes up or down, that'd be kind of a period of kind of phasing that in that would be helpful either way.
Yes, so it's really just a call for local authorities to send us all of the views that they have on potential transitional arrangements and on the formula. We'll take it all into great consideration as we move forwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well as the kind of people who are waiting for adaptations, it's also kind of the impact for people to think about on their housing assistance policies, and kind of the update cycle bit, maybe in kind of 2-3 years. If they've just introduced a new policy, maybe they would not want to change it straight away, or if they're thinking about changing it, kind of understanding over what period of time the potential changes to the allocations would be introduced. So is there any kind of thought, Rebecca, in terms of kind of next steps to this, or does it kind of depend on what the what kind of responses to the consultation are, and discussions with ministers at that point?
Yes, it really does depend on analysis of consultation results. So the next steps will be, after we've analysed all of your views that are local authority views that they have sent through on the basis of the consultation, and then we'll take it from there. I've got I think 2 more slides left on transitioning to a new approach.
Okay.
Is this the right time to move on then, or is there any other questions? Yeah.
No, I think so. I think now sounds perfect. So I'll bring your slides back and stop out for a second.
So, as we've already very briefly touched on in this question session, moving to a new allocations approach means that the share of the total fund amount that an authority will receive will change. Some local authorities will receive more funding than they currently receive, and other local authorities will receive less. And this change will more accurately reflect local need and demand for the DFG. Government understands the pressures on local demand for the DFG, and we consider that any transition to a new allocations approach should allow authorities time to adjust to their new allocation level, what we've just been talking about. This will help ensure that local authorities can still meet their statutory duty and local demand for the DFG. So we are proposing to phase in new allocations over time to gradually move authorities to their updated funding amounts, and this transition could take a number of years. We want to know if you agree with our proposals to phase in as part of the consultation, and how long you think this should be, in your opinion. We're also inviting views on whether we should have a funding floor, which would protect a proportion or amount of funding for local authorities that would receive less funding with the new allocations formula. And I think it's important to know that this would involve a direct trade-off with funding amounts for authorities that would gain funding with a new formula. And transitioning to a new approach is also likely to take longer if authorities are protected from losses with a funding floor. So we want to know if you think the funding floor should be based, is a good idea, if it should be based on retaining percentage of the previous year's allocation each year, or set a cash limit on losses each year, and what you think this should look like. Again, with thanks to Foundations for collecting questions from LAs and for your queries that you sent through to us in correspondence, we've noted the following questions relating to transitioning to a new approach. And these are: what is the planned timeline for introducing the new approach? Will authorities see indicative allocations before the formula is finalised? Is there scope to revisit or adjust the formula? Will the same transition period apply to all councils, or could it be tailored? How will the funding floor or cap work? Now, all of these questions are policy questions, and as the policy, as I just mentioned before, is still very much in development, I'm not going to be able to answer these questions fully at this time. So if you have a view on the transitioning, please input these into your consultation responses. We really encourage you to respond to the consultation because your views will be taken into account. As I mentioned with next steps, that is the next steps. We want to listen to you. We want to find out what you're thinking about this, and then we can move things forward. Responses will be carefully analysed to help progress the formula and any future transition, and that will be, I must make clear, subject to ministerial consideration and decision. So now time for any further questions on transitioning to a new approach, or anything else that you might want to ask now.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. And I think so. Let's see what we've got here. So I think Caroline was just confirming that there wouldn't be any extensions of the consultation period. If kind of the ambition is to get the new system in from April next year, which I think, because as we've kind of talked about already, in almost whatever the formula is, it's going to be fairer than the allocations are now because of the way they've been outdated. That there is data on DFG published every year. We publish a summary of the data on the website, and we do return to every local authority a scorecard showing a kind of a detailed benchmarking analysis of their figures against others in their region and others nationally. I think we've been through what the interim changes would be again. So in terms of the funding floor, I mean, as I think, as you said, Rebecca, I suppose it could either be never. I suppose to a certain extent, I suppose it depends if funding increases, stays the same in the future. But I suppose it would either be don't decrease it by a certain percent, or don't decrease it by a certain pound figure, which I guess probably a bit more tricky, but maybe something like don't decrease by more than 10% for those that, which I think will probably be relatively fewer in that position. But is it that's that kind of safeguard, isn't it, that kind of the figures that they are now wouldn't change significantly over a short period of time?
So I'll bring Bilal in to talk a little bit more about what that, some of the things that we could be thinking about in terms of how a cap and floor works. But essentially, all of these things we're still thinking about. We'll wait and see what comes back from the consultation, and then we'll have a continue to think about what transitional arrangement options could look like as we move forward. Is there anything else that you'd like to add here, Bilal, or have I just sort of covered that we're still considering how to move forward and that the responses will be key?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it. I mean, there was I think I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing of the question, but I think there was a question in the consultation about how LAs or potentially anyone would consider the best way of approaching any sort of transition arrangements. So whether it's a percentage or a sort of a fixed number, but I think operationally it's probably easier to work with percentages. Yeah, but as I say, it's nothing that's been decided yet, and as Rebecca says, we're waiting for responses.
Yeah, I mean, I think this this question from Donna sums up one of the issues with the existing formula. I think if you work in a two-tier area, almost every county has at least one district that has underspends and another district that has waiting lists because they've run out of funding. So this will hopefully smooth some of that out, Donna. So yeah, it's been confirmed in the chat that the idea is to have it for next year's allocation. And I guess probably difficult for you to give any timescales on that, Rebecca. But I think kind of this year's was announced in November time, which I guess is, given these changes, probably unlikely for next year. But I guess maybe I think we've heard the date for the budget as end of November. So there may be some more information maybe around then, although I guess if the allocations are changed, I suppose maybe an indication of the overall pot maybe at time of the budget, or I guess you probably won't be able to say yet, but kind of further details on the allocation may follow that.
Yeah, so I think Caroline's just popped in the chat. So the key answer to that is that we want to be able to give ministers the option to introduce next year, but it will be for a new minister to decide when they arrive. And any questions on funding is obviously for DHSC.
Yes, yeah. I think waiting for a new minister to be appointed that covers DFG at the moment, aren't we? And I guess maybe would you be interested in comments on the kind of floor for 2026 maybe being different to floors in 27, 28, maybe kind of a step change to that, given that allocations for 2026 may not be known until maybe early in the new year. So again, that might be useful for people to feedback that if allocations for 2026 are relatively late in being announced, significant changes for 2026 will be difficult, but maybe larger changes for 27, 28 might be a more appropriate way to do it.
So we understand that perspective, but please again feed that into your consultation responses, any of these views. Thank you.
Great. I don't know if Caroline wanted to add any final words, but or either from yourself, Rebecca, or Bilal, are there any final things you want to ask other than to encourage people to respond to the consultation?
I think the encouragement is key for me. I don't know, Caroline, if you want to say anything. I know that you've been quite busy on the chat as well.
So I'll bring Caroline onto the screen. There we go. Hi, Caroline.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to keep track of the chat. It's been very fast and furious, as mentioned earlier. So hopefully I've answered as many questions as we can. The main thing really is please respond to the consultation. I think foundations have put the links in the chat several times. Hopefully the slides and the chat can be shared afterwards. Rebecca's slides have also got the links in again to where the consultation document is, and also the link where you can respond to it. And if you are concerned about managing a potential change in budget, please tell us in the questions on transition, which is basically what that means is, you know, how we get from here to there. If you think that transition should be slow and take several years, if you think that you can't manage more, I mean, Paul mentioned 10%. For some LAs, you might think a 10% change is very large and too big. So please tell us if you can't manage more than a 5% change or a 2% change or whatever it is. Just respond to the consultation and tell us what you think you need, and that's what's going to really help determine. And in terms of, yes, as we said, unfortunately, we don't have a minister covering this at the moment. Rushanara Ali was our minister. She resigned in August, so we're waiting for a new minister, and we'll have to bring them up to speed as soon as they arrive. So it really will be for a new minister to make final decisions about what we do next year. So you know, we can't share, because genuinely decisions have not been made on what the allocations will be for next year. We're consulting, we want to hear your views. So things may change as a result of the consultation. You might point out new data or sources or info that we hadn't thought of. So we need to hear what you want on the transition. We need to get the size of the budget from DH when they've decided that. There's quite a lot of things still to be figured out. So and then we'll need to advise the minister, and it will be for them to decide what to do from April. So I'm sorry that we aren't able to kind of give that information right now, but again, just please respond to the consultation, and please tell us your views in that consultation response, and then we will be in the best position to take account of all your thoughts. That's really what I want to say.
Great, thanks, Caroline. And as kind of said before, I think it's fantastic that we're at the point where we're looking at a new allocations formula, because the existing one has been problematic for some local authorities for a little while. So I know there's been quite a lot of questions and issues and challenges raised as part of the chat, but I think the overall thing is that it's very positive that we're going to have a new formula going forwards, and for the next 10, 15, 20 years, however long, the DFG is going to be allocated in a much fairer way, which I think will help many thousands of people across the country, which is what we're all here to do at the end of the day, isn't it? Great. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'll leave the chat open for a little bit while I wrap up. But yep, thank you all for joining us, and I'm sure that you'll get lots of responses now, or hopefully, I'm sure you will get lots of responses now as part of the consultation. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon.
Foundations Live.
Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's challenge keeping up with all the questions today, but hopefully you've now got a much better understanding of how the allocations formula is proposed to work, why it's being introduced, and what will happen over the next few months, hopefully ready for a changing formula from April next year. We'll share all the slides out with people who've been on the call today, and if you've got any other colleagues that want to watch it, they can go back to wherever you've been watching today and watch it again. You can watch it again on demand as well if you want to. So all very exciting stuff. All very exciting stuff. So coming up, we've got another Foundations Live in a couple of weeks' time, talking about the home adaptations installer network, and we also start our DFG Champions Roadshows tour next Wednesday in Southampton. So we'll be going around the country from next Wednesday talking about high cost adaptations. We're introducing a new DFG Champions board game, which the idea behind is to get people talking about DFGs in a different and hopefully exciting way. And we'll also be talking about trusted assessors. So hopefully we'll see lots of you over the next few weeks. After the Foundations Live finishes today, you'll be sent a feedback email. where if you include your email address, you can get a CPD certificate if you need that for your records. But that's all for today. A very special Foundations Live. So first time ever on a Thursday, and first time ever not at 2:30. But thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.